Hey, welcome back, everybody. Of course, you know me. My name is Dr. Keith McNally, and this is another edition of the Envision Speaker Series. I'm here with Krista, Jennifer, and Lauren, and I'm going to give them in just a moment an opportunity to introduce themselves. Today's conversation is going to be very specific. We're going to change the conversation around what it means to be healthy, but in perspective of what it means to be healthy as a woman. So this is going to be a really interesting conversation for me because obviously I am not, and I don't identify as one either. But these three ladies are going to give us some really keen insight into what that means and how everybody can benefit from this conversation. So let's get started. I want everybody to introduce themselves. We'll start with Krista. We'll go down to Jennifer. Then we'll end with Lauren. And then we'll get the conversation started. Krista, welcome to the call.
Thank you so much for having me, Keith, having me on again. So I am Krista Hernandez. I am a wellness coach, helping women with chronic illness to heal in mind, body, and spirit. And I am here because I want to teach women that they have all they need to heal themselves within themselves already. It's an innate power that we are born with. And sometimes, a lot of the time, it just gets kind of buried in there by, the different trials and tribulations of life and society. So we have to learn how to activate that power and use it to heal in, every aspect of our lives.
I love it. What would you want to get out of this conversation once we kind of get through it? What do you want to see happen?
First and foremost, I want women to be able to give a voice to their pain, whether that pain be physical or emotional. And I want them to know they are not alone, to come away with that feeling that they are seen and heard and understood by others who are experiencing the same pain, who have learned to heal that, similar kind of pain. And everyone's pain looks different, and that's okay.
I love it. And we're going to try to get there. We are going to get there. Jennifer, welcome to the call.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I am Jennifer Katz. I'm a registered dietitian and the founder of Fresh Balanced Nutrition, where I help women who are 35 and over with their health, specifically the journey through perimenopause and menopause, um, taking care of themselves as far as nutrition and lifestyle. I am also the creator of the Balanced Woman Over 40 method, which is a 5-week program where we really dive deep to explore women's feelings about this time and kind of turn it to the positive and let them know that they can take a very huge part in controlling their own health and their outcome through nutrition, exercise, stress, and sleep.
Well, I appreciate that. So far, I got a theme going. Women can take control of their own health. And so I like that. Lauren, welcome to the call. Who are you?
Hello, thank you for having me here today. I'm really excited to be here. I am Lauren Nicole Fonville. I am an integrative energy practitioner and the founder of Mind Shift with Lauren. I specialize in helping women reduce stress, anxiety, and overwhelm in their personal life and in their business so they can show up as their best self. I specialize in the emotional freedom technique, but I'm also certified as a yoga instructor, sound healer, meditation. I like to involve a variety of different healing modalities when I work with my clients. And just like the other ladies have said, I really am all about helping women access those answers that really are within and a lot of the time get covered up and pushed down and getting to the root of why you're feeling the way that you're feeling physically, mentally, and emotionally.
Well, then let's jump into the conversation. And that's a good segue because in our pre-call, in our planning session, Lauren, you actually raised this question, which I thought so intriguing. And the question was this: if your pain could talk, what would it say? And I think that's a good way to start this conversation by allowing the three of you to kind of contemplate on that question and provide some insight. Who wants to get started?
I mean, I love that question. That's a question that I often ask my clients that come to me that are dealing with physical pain. People come to me for a variety of different reasons. Sometimes it's they're feeling really anxious and overwhelmed, and they've tried all of these different healing modalities, and nothing's really working. And they heard about tapping, and let's give it a try. And maybe it's also because that there is this, there are these emotional components to physical pain. And I think the best example of that is with anxiety and stress. So when you are feeling stressed and overwhelmed, where do you feel that in your body? Most people have an immediate response to that. And for me, I really feel that in my neck and in my shoulders. And ironically, I just had a healing session right before this call that focused on this pain that I'm dealing with in my shoulder. And what came of that, I'll just share my personal experience, was this realization that this pain is coming up because it is helping me to stay grounded and helping me to stay in my body, because I have so much going on and I have all these thoughts that are going on, and I'm lately been very easily kind of carried off in my thoughts. And so it came to me through this session that the pain is helping me to stay grounded. And so obviously that is not something I want. I don't enjoy this pain, but it has shed some light on other things that I can do to help myself stay grounded and really, feel into my body and not get carried off into the thoughts. So it is an interesting question, and it's an interesting question that has so many different answers when I ask it. So I'm excited that we're starting it off with that.
So your body is talking to you in a certain way.
Mhm.
It's communicating something. And getting,
Our bodies are talking to us constantly.
well,
We
Krista,
just have
talk
have
to
to
us
learn
about
to
it.
listen.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's if my pain could talk, that's exactly what it would say. It would take me by the shoulders and shake me, which is kind of what it did for a long time through a variety of symptoms, just shaking me and saying, I'm trying to tell you something. Pain is the body's warning system. Touch a hot stove, ow, burned. But within us, just like with Lauren's shoulder, often with my hips, which like to cause me pain sometimes to try and stop me from moving forward, because it is our hips that move us forward in life. So when I'm working on something occasionally that is, going to really move me forward in life or in business, these hips like to start to ache. And I take a page out of Lauren's book and I tap it out, moving forward, and release that fear that is manifesting in there. And the more we listen and just sit with our bodies, we start to learn the unique ways that our bodies hold pain, what manifests in what areas: hips, shoulders, neck, calves are another one for me, that like to hold tension. Feet, it can be anywhere. You've just got to get to know your body. And as you do that, you can pinpoint the symptoms along the way. So that's why pain can actually be a good thing. It's awful to go through, but it's a form of communication. You just have to learn to decipher it like any other. It's kind of like learning a language. And so there's potential in pain. There's potential in illness, because if we're not experiencing full health, if we're not experiencing healing, that means we have tremendous capacity yet to do it.
I like that. Jennifer, do you want to add to this?
Yeah, I'm sitting here thinking how I would express that thought of the pain. So I feel like that pain that I experienced and what I saw was other women suffering and experiencing pain because they weren't getting the attention that we need sort of at a time in our lives. So we're experiencing the pain of symptoms and how we feel about ourselves, how we're looking at ourselves, because we seem to expect that we need to be suffering and staying with this pain. And maybe it's an emotional pain too, about how we think we're supposed to look and we're not looking like society expects us to. And that motivated me and made me uncomfortable that this wasn't right. that we as women shouldn't be sitting with this pain, whether it's emotional and physical, in the women that I deal with. So I tried to look for answers to how can we help ourselves? How can we get ourselves out of the situation? This can't be right to sit here with symptoms of perimenopause and menopause and thinking that we're supposed to look a certain way when we look in the mirror. We need to ask more from the doctors, more from the scientists who are doing studies on women 35 and over, because there isn't enough there. So I found that pain very motivating for me to help other women in this space.
And
No,
Jennifer, I think that says so much about the ways we support each other too, because sometimes I feel like there's this sense of you're supposed to tell other women you're suffering. You know, it's the jokes out there we see in pop culture all the time about women suffering, and there's some martyrism out there too, unfortunately, but there's this sense of a female solidarity that because those that came before us suffered, they teach us that we must suffer. It's a rite of passage in these kind of toxic generational patterns that aren't necessarily born from malice. It's just born from a common experience that, you know, generationally mothers and grandmothers think we're supposed to have, and they think that's how they're helping us cope with it. So I know I've had reluctance in the past to express, oh, actually, things are going really well this month. Hormonally, things are getting better each month, because a lot of times other women don't want to hear that because they're suffering so much. So I think the more we change that conversation, the more those of us who are afraid to express that things are going well will, you know, feel better expressing that, and it'll create that snowball effect of optimism and healing, you know, throughout our, you know, our small communities.
But in the same, on the same note, I think it is important for those women that are in pain and suffering to, you know, acknowledge that and hold space for how they are feeling. Because if it's, you know, that idea of, I'm not going to go there, I'm not going to talk about it, I'm not going to share it with people because they don't want, you know. And I also think that, you know, kind of like to the opposite of what you were saying about like people don't want to hear that you're feeling good. I think it also gets to a point where if you're complaining a lot about how things are not going well, people don't want to hear that either, right? It's like that, like
True.
finding that balance. But I do think it's important, even if you're doing it, you know, in session with someone, to really acknowledge how it is that you're feeling and hold space for that so that you can move through it. Because when we don't do that, and I know you ladies know this, it's that idea of shoving it down, right? We're going to ignore how I'm feeling, whether it's physical or emotional, and then I'm going to distract myself with something else so as to not feel those things. And that works for the short term, right? We can power through, and sometimes that's what society tells us: keep going, you know, work through it. But in the end, all that stuff that you've been shoving down is going to get to that point where it's going to come out in some way, in some fashion. Maybe it's physical, maybe it's emotionally, like lashing out, you know, it's going to make itself known. So yeah, I think, you know, it's important. It's important to acknowledge. And another thing I like to say a lot is that we really need to listen to our bodies when she whispers, so we don't have to hear her scream. And you know, like you were saying, Krista, like our bodies are trying to communicate to us. They're trying to tell us something. You know, I think, or I share the story of how when I was training for a half marathon, my ankle started hurting, and I was like, oh, you know, the whole thought, no pain, no gain, right? Like, I'm just going to keep going and running. And it was only hurting when I was running, like the impacts from running. But I kept going. I didn't rest. I kept going through it. And then it started hurting when I was just walking. And then it just started hurting all the time. I'm like, okay, well, this is not getting better. It's, you know, and ended up going to the doctor. I had a hairline fracture. Good thing that I went before I ran that half marathon, right? We need to listen to the signals that our body's sending us. And that can be a real practice, and of cultivating that relationship between the mind and the body. And so a practice that I often like to share with my clients is setting an alarm on your phone for different times throughout the day. That's like, how am I feeling? physically, emotionally, how am I feeling? And then connecting that to what am I thinking about? And it's not something that we do a lot, and it can be very, very eye-opening, you know? So it's like, okay, if I'm feeling really good, wonderful. What am I thinking about? If I'm feeling really sad or frustrated, okay, what am I thinking about? And creating those connections, making that awareness can then set you up for taking different action, which of course is going to lead to a different result.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, actually, it is a pretty good idea. I want to get the focus back to Jennifer real quick because you focus on women who are going through a very specific time in their life. And so if we're bringing this all together through a conversation and thinking about what Lauren just said, how do you help women change their thoughts around what's going through them at at that time in their life? How do you strategize it?
Um, well, there has to be more conversation about speaking about this out loud. It's been whispered about, we're embarrassed about it, and it's just starting to change. We're starting to see some commercials and some groups in the media and in print that are more freely and comfortably talking about this time of life for women. And I think that that will allow us to start talking to each other. In fact, there's all kinds of communities that I've observed recently where women are starting to share their pain and suffering with each other and help each other out. So I think we need to go ahead and feel comfortable about talking about this stage out loud, and then get the experts involved in it, like Lauren and what Chris is doing, and you, Keith, for putting this in a media outlet where people can discover it, so we can become more comfortable with it and share our experiences, and then learn from the experts who are digging up more and more information now for us in the stage of menopause about what we can do to feel better and realize. One thing that women aren't really realizing are some of these symptoms, because there's at least 34 symptoms that are specifically related to the hormonal shifts of perimenopause and menopause, that these are normal. And our physicians and other health experts usually aren't trained in menopause. And that's really unfortunate because they aren't able to say, oh, this is normal. You're going through something completely normal. And we can help you feel better by doing this. Or just the thought alone of realizing that these symptoms are something that you would expect to go through can reduce your anxiety.
And I think that's part of the conversation, or maybe from my perspective, it should be part of the conversation. The words that we use when we have conversations with people, and especially in your situations, is that let's identify what's going on. I think awareness, and I think all three of you in our pre-call and our planning session talked about being aware, and even you've mentioned it today, being aware that, you know, if my shoulder's acting up, it means something. If my ankle is acting up, it means something. If this is going on, it means something. Jennifer, can you talk a bit more about that? If when your woman's body is changing, it means something, and it means something valuable.
Right. And if we go ahead and educate women about what is going on, and not whisper and talk to our grandmothers and our mothers and then pass it on to our daughters, why are we having these symptoms? We're having hot flashes. What does that mean? I mean, even your emotions can set that off. And it is so powerful to know physiologically what's happening in this stage. You can calm yourself, right, Lauren? You can calm yourself to actually avoid having a hot flash. So the learning has to be done, and we're not doing it. Finding out what hormones are involved and how that manifests in your body, and how you can have control over it by lifestyle choices, or what you eat, what you're drinking, alcohol, how you exercise, that you can have an impact on it. But but being taught by your doctor or your gynecologist or your life coach about what to expect and what's going on in your body is tremendously powerful and empowering.
Lauren, you are a tapping expert. Yes? And you're on mute. Okay, just making sure because I didn't hear you.
Yeah, I am.
Okay. And I remember in the planning call that Jennifer actually watched one of your YouTube videos on tapping, and she benefited by that experience. Can you touch on that just a little bit on the value of, and it's EFT, right? I always get the acronym confused.
Oh, that's right.
Emotional
Freedom technique.
freedom technique, it's tapping. And so talk to us about the value of that, please.
Yeah. So it is a tool that really does help you do just that. It helps you find freedom from your emotions. And it is a somatic tool in that you're actually tapping on certain points of your body while simultaneously acknowledging the emotions. And doing that allows you to kind of what I was talking about before, allows you to really sit in those feelings and really feel them. And it's not something that we like to do when those emotions are uncomfortable emotions. And it can be a really, really powerful process. Like I said, instead of like ignoring it and shoving it down and saving it for another day, we're going to allow ourselves to sit in it, acknowledge how these feelings are impacting us so that we can move through them. And a lot of the time there are memories from the past that can come up, right? We maybe from our childhood or younger years where we didn't have these tools and we didn't have the awareness around what to do with these emotions, and those experiences that have these emotions attached to them build up over time. And sometimes we're completely unaware of how something that can happen in present day, you know, maybe somebody says something to you that makes you feel like you're not doing a good enough job, right? Then that can trigger these experiences or that are associated with the emotions from the past of maybe a teacher saying something to you as a child where you didn't do a good enough job in class. And so logically our mind is like, oh, that was forever ago. That's not related to why I'm feeling this way today. But I promise you, if through this tapping process, a memory like that starts to come into your awareness, there is a reason for that. And tapping is this tool that really helps us to connect the dots to get to the root of why we are really feeling this way. Why is this happening now? What's going on? It has also been shown to help with trauma in really creating space between the trigger of somebody saying something and how that makes you feel in your body, right? Maybe you start to feel your heart racing, or you start to sweat thinking everybody's looking at you, or whatever the case may be. And so it helps to create this space so that eventually when you're exposed to those triggers, you don't have the same physical sensation in your body. And I mean, that's really powerful, especially for those that have PTSD. I mean, there's lots of studies that have been done on how tapping has helped veterans with PTSD and reducing the symptoms that they're experiencing. And again, it's really about cultivating that connection between the mind and the body.
Yeah,
And
to add to what Lauren said there is a book I highly recommend everyone read called The Body Keeps the Score. So when those memories come up in our minds, we may say to ourselves, consciously, oh, I haven't thought about that in forever. Your body has, because your body keeps that score of all those memories of everything being stored somewhere. Pain is a lot like pain symptoms, whatever it may be. It's a lot like student loan debt, right? So you build up this debt, which is all the trials of life, all the trauma you've been through, and that gains interest over time. And so think of payments as like self-care. You got to do the appropriate amount of self-care to pay back that debt and to maintain your health. But if you ignore it, well, it's just going to build and compound with interest. Eventually, you're going to default. You're going to get really sick, and then just like with student loans, the rules of the game might change. Whereas one company might take over your loans and have different rules. Well, you might contract a different autoimmune disease. Your body may start doing something different entirely. So the longer you let it go and ignore it, the longer it's going to take you to dig out from that mess. So that's why prevention is the key.
Yes, I love that example. And I think that speaks to why it's so important to teach these skills to kids, right? Like they are dealing with so much stress and so much overwhelm. And so to be able to give them tools to help mitigate some of that is so important at a young age. And I do know that a lot of the schools are doing like a mindful minute or incorporating meditation practices and stuff like that, which is great. But the more, the better, because different healing modalities resonate with different people. And it's about, figuring out what is really going to work best for you and make you feel good in your body, because we all deserve to feel good. We all deserve to feel healthy and vibrant and joyful. And I truly believe like that's why we're here. And so, part of that is doing the work and allowing yourself to go there. And that can be scary for some people. If you are someone who has suppressed your emotions for a really long time, right? Maybe you haven't allowed yourself to really feel the sadness of a bunch of different situations that you've gone through. It can be really scary for someone to be like, okay, I'm going to allow myself to feel the sadness. No, thank you. That sounds awful, right? But we always make it worse in our mind than it is. And like Krista said, it's going to come back to bite you if you don't allow yourself to feel it and move through it and make those self-care payments. We need to do that. We absolutely need to do that. And I think as women, we're often putting everyone else before us, right? We make a commitment to do something for someone else and we are doing it. But when we say we're going to do something for ourselves, it's the first thing to go. And we need to be women of our word. And we need to have that type of commitment that we make for other people, for ourselves, and really put ourselves first. And that is not selfish. That is, it's you're filling your own cup so that you can be your best self for those that you love. And I think that's an important thing for people to realize. I have a lot of moms that come to me and it's like, well, I don't have the time. I can't do this. I don't have the time. Well, what is that going to mean if you don't, like I always like to say, people, if you can't do this for yourself, which is obviously the best reason to be doing something for yourself, then do it for your kids. Allow that to be your reason now that you're doing this for your kids, because you're going to be a better mother, and a better friend and a better spouse because of it. So yeah. All right.
Well, then let's talk about that. Let's talk about the empowerment piece, because you're all talking about we need to do something. Women need to do something. Mind, body, spirit. Let's put that together. Let's put that conversation together. What do we need to do? What do you need to do? And how do you teach that so that women feel they're doing the right thing for themselves?
Well, to what Lauren said, we need to redefine that word selfish, because it's become an insult. It's become a nasty word that a lot of people like to throw around to women to try and get their own way. If a woman is not bending to their will, doing what they want, being selfish literally just means putting yourself first, taking care of yourself. There's nothing wrong with that. I highly encourage women out there to be more selfish, because it's sorely lacking in so many women's lives. And selfish in various aspects of their lives as well, because that's what holistic healing is all about. It's not just the body. It's not just the mind and spirit. It's everything outside yourself as well. It's the way you're managing your home. It's the way you're dealing with your finances. It's the way you are showing up in your relationships. So all of that has to come together. And all of that is going to affect you in body, mind, and spirit. It's like, for instance, the left side of the body is the more feminine side energetically, and the right side is the more masculine side. So if you're consistently having, physical issues on your right side, you've got some trauma there, it may be time to deal with some issues regarding your father or a male authority figure. of some kind. There are just all kinds of signs and symptoms to start watching out for, to be mindful of externally and internally. And by being more selfish, it can allow us to become more aware of how we're showing up, of our thought patterns and our behavioral patterns, how, you know, those patterns show up throughout our lives, how it started with childhood programming and what it looks like now, and just making those connections. It's super important.
I like this whole theme. I think that if we were informed about how, even when we, as women, tuning into ourselves, when we still do have our period, the 4 phases of it, we are totally different in the way that our emotions, our physical body shows up. You're more introspective, you need to rest, you need to sort of crawl inside a cave during one phase. And then another phase is when you can get your personal bests. If you're an athlete, you can give that presentation and knock it out. And knowing which of those phases you're in and what you might expect from yourself, and sort of getting to know yourself that way, that's not anything that we're taught. And you kind of have to find it out for yourself. I wish it was more common knowledge for girls as we're growing up. And then you learn to tune into your body as you go through all of the other phases in your life, perimenopause and through menopause too, the powers that a woman has because of these hormonal shifts. And then you're really taking care of yourself because you understand more about your body.
And I think when you're trying to decide like what action to take care of yourself, I think it's important to kind of just pay attention to what I call universal taps or little soul nudges, which are being open to the signs, right? If you watch a documentary that, let's say, talks about tapping and you're like, oh, that's intriguing, right? Follow that nudge and maybe go take a class somewhere or watch another video and see where that leads. Or if a friend is talking about their amazing acupuncturist and that's something you've never done and you're curious about that, go explore it. So and especially when something is showing up in your world multiple times and you keep putting it off, like, oh, yeah, I'll go check that out later. No, know that that thing is coming into your awareness for a reason, and go give yourself the gift of checking it out, because it might be the thing that is going to make you feel better, feel more grounded, or how I like to say, it helps you to come home to yourself. And that's where we all want to be. We want to be feeling good and grounded in our heart space.
And there's a snowball effect to that too, because the more that happens, the more you get excited about the fact that you're gaining that awareness in your body and things start falling into place more. You know, I had that happen. The exact thing for me happened over the summer. I kept hearing about dry needling, and I was having dinner with a friend. We were having a girls' night, and she mentioned, it was like the last mention of dry needling. And then I woke up the next morning with this burning urge to find a place, make an appointment. And it was absolutely transformative. I had 3 sessions that made me feel like I had a brand new body. And we just have to listen, because just like, you know, Jennifer said, with each month, those 4 cycles, our bodies go through cycles, you know, year by year too. You know, our cells regenerate, our neural pathways change, if we're in that growth mindset, and we're constantly learning, we're constantly changing. So the more we listen, the more we can find those right tools for that phase.
All 3 of you, in one word or another, have used the word power or empowerment. And so with the amount of time that we have left in this conversation, it's time to give the women who are listening some power. And I want each of you to give them something from your expertise. Give them some power today, please. Because maybe they've not known that they had the power. And all 3 of you have said, you have the power. That's what I literally heard. You have the power. They just don't know it yet.
I can't help but in my mind think about the old He-Man cartoon. I have the power with the sword. Definitely, I you know, broke that tape when I was about 4 or 5 years old. But I mean, that's the core of it, is understanding that you have that power, because It's that mind-body connection. Our thoughts really do control our reality. That's not just woo-woo fluff. That is physics. That is the vibration of our bodies. That's at a molecular level. And the more you start to understand that and see the places in your life where you can take control, where you can make even just tiny changes, it's really a series of tiny changes that lead up to big results. And then you just start knocking down one obstacle after another and gaining that momentum. I think it was Lao Tzu who said it, and it's so true, is that the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. So just take that one step and you're starting.
I would say, and I think maybe this is because this has become so prominent in my life at this particular time, maybe the easiest place to start is the power of the pause. And so taking time every day to pause. I mean, if you can do it every hour, even for just a minute, to like push back from your desk for a minute and close your eyes and breathe and just sit and notice how you're feeling. And if the thoughts are there, it's okay, no judgment, just closing your eyes and breathing. Or you can even do some breathing and tapping if you like. I like to do some silent tapping, but pause. And the more that you do that, the more you're going to begin to connect that relate or create that relationship and build that relationship between the mind and the body.
I think the women that I have in my community, my clients, often feel that they have no power anymore. Everything's falling apart. This is the end. And I really want them to take hold and know that they can change their lives by seeking out information, getting some support from people like Lauren and Krista and myself, who can help them to understand their bodies and what's going on and turn this around, because these phases are very creative phases for women. They're like a rebirth. We have the power to share this with the woman coming behind us, and we need to inform ourselves and understand that this is a wonderful opportunity to take control of your health and your emotions and help other women in the same way.
Krista, Jennifer, Lauren, thank you so much for this conversation, and thank you for imparting your wisdom, knowledge, and your experience with our audience. For those of you who are watching and listening, this has been another edition of the Envision Speaker Series, and I'll see you next time. Take care.